Sara Higdon, welcome to Dad Saves America.
Hey, John, thanks for having me.
So you are the digital marketing manager at my friend Matt and Terry Kibbe's Free the People.
Yes.
We have run in similar circles for a long time, and I'm going to be honest. You were coming into town, and our mutual friend who works here, Jesse's like, you got to have Sara on and talk about all the things that you would talk about, and the reason is you were not born Sara.
No.
And I've talked about these trans issues on the show.
Mm-hmm.
And as a parent, I find them incredibly uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know that you're somebody who can actually have an uncomfortable conversation about this.
Absolutely.
So my first table setting, my own anxieties laid bare. The last conversation like this I had was with Andrew Doyle.
Okay.
And I guess here's how else I'll set the table and dive in. I want to understand your story.
Yeah.
I had a reservation about even doing this. And that is what I perceive to be happening in our culture. And given we're sitting here, it's April 2025. So there's already been like Trump and all this stuff that sort of started to like dial this back.
Mm-hmm.
But there are lots of parents out there whose kids, for whatever reason, are coming to them sometimes with demands about what they want to happen to themselves. Mm-hmm. Mom, Dad, I'm your daughter, but I want to be your son. I met someone whose sister went to their parents and said, let me start transitioning or I'm going to kill myself. This is a firsthand account. Yep. It's rare, but it's not rare enough to not be worried about it. And so my worry in this conversation, and this can even serve as a disclaimer for the viewer, is if you're struggling with this, I don't want to be someone who's putting ideas in front of you as a parent or as a kid that send you down a path of self-harm that you will regret. With all that said, I believe in civil discourse. Yeah. We like each other. We share a lot of values. And I think this is a good platform for us to explore what's going on here. And I'm going to try to play the role of skeptical, worried parent who thinks bad stuff's going on. And with all that said, tell me your story. All right, I'll keep this quick. If you like what you're hearing and want to hear more, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss our new content as it comes out every week. And now, back to the conversation.
Okay, so my story. So I've had this very uncomfortability with my biological sex from a very young age. I remember like my first memories probably when I was 4 years old, wishing that I was a girl, wishing that I'd been born a girl, not knowing why I felt this way, knowing that I wasn't a girl. I think that's part of the issue that we see in society today is that we're pushing that you literally are the opposite sex, born in the wrong body. And that's not the way it feels. It doesn't feel like you're actually born in the wrong body. It's you just wish you were born the other way. And so this was something that I hid my entire life. And it wasn't normalized. I grew up through the 90s and it was just, there wasn't like much talk about it. And so learning to like explore those feelings, going through puberty, which was a very weird time. Cause I mean, I'm bisexual. So it's like at some point I was envious of the girls, but also interested in them. And so that was a confusing time for myself. And then I was doing stuff. I ended up getting out when I graduated college. I joined the military, trying to do ultra masculine things. I was a wrestler growing up, doing more masculine things, and none of that helped. It was always there in the back of my mind. So in 2014, I finally came out to the first person that I ever knew. Didn't know that this was actual gender dysphoria. I thought maybe I just was cross-dressing. That's all it was, and that's where I could be happy with that. Couple years later, I get out of the military. I move to Atlanta. I start, exploring everything a little bit more, going out, dressed as a female, going to bars and stuff like that, and just seeing if this is who I was. And that felt more comfortable to me. And again, this is 2017, 2018, really as this whole like craze started to pick up. And then it's interesting because I started speaking out and almost getting canceled by the community in like 2017, 2018, when like we used to call them transgenders. And so it's the people that were doing it because it was a fad. It was good. And I saw this on Reddit boards and stuff like that. And I was banned from Reddit boards for saying transgenders exist. And when the detransition rate skyrockets, it's going to hurt actual trans people. This is 2017, 2018 timeframe. We're seeing exactly what I predicted and what I was canceled for by the community at that point happening right now. We're seeing detransitioners starting to come out of the woodworks. I'm friends with a lot of those detransitioners. But for me, that was even before I started hormones. I started hormones in 2019, in March of 2019. And then I started speaking out, started my YouTube channel and everything like that in 2020, and started speaking out against the community that's pushing these values, pushing this onto children and stuff like that. So I've done a lot of activism over the years against, like, so the fear that you have, I had that same fear myself. I've worked on bills in state legislature. So I helped pass the ban on cross-sex hormones and surgeries for minors in the state of Georgia and the state of Louisiana. As I sit here today, I was at the state capitol here of Texas yesterday with a friend of mine, and I was meeting with some of the mom army parents and some of the parents that are down there. And so I met with some of them to talk about these issues and be like, hey, where can I be of assistance here in Texas? So there's different things that we can do, and that's my story. Is I'm out here pushing against the narrative because I do think, as somebody who's gone through it myself, my voice carries some weight with people who would normally think that that the people that are pushing against it are being bigoted towards trans people and whatnot. And I'm like, it's not being bigoted to try to protect children. And that's where I'm at with all of it.
My first exposure, really beyond, incidental media things or whatever, but the first time this became an issue that the first person I met actually that had transitioned is Deirdre McCloskey.
Yep.
The economist formerly Donald.
Mm-hmm.
I met them at, and you're going to hear, I'm going to struggle with the pronouns.
It's fine.
Because there's a little, and we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
But like the she is, I struggle with.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't used to, and now I do.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about that.
Yeah.
But I met Deirdre and didn't realize Deirdre had been Donald. Deirdre's got a stutter and also a raspy voice and looks like an old woman. So it didn't occur. I didn't know anything about this. Like, oh, okay, interesting, scratchy, but whatever. Over 10 years ago, because of the Keynes Hayek rap videos, and I get invited to these econ conferences. And Deirdre was super nice to me and was like, oh, I love these videos you're making. This is like terrific for getting ideas about economics out there in the world. And then I want to say, I think it was 2018, my son was in 6th grade. It might have been 2017, 2018, I sometimes forget. But, and was starting to have this stuff really kind of pushed on him, like literally pushed on him in the sense that he had a sociology class in his school, 6th grade. And the assignment at one point was to come to school and address and this was a private school in Texas, but the private schools can be crazier than the public schools, frankly. The most extreme things are often at the like wealthy private schools, as part of trying to understand what it's like if you were a trans kid. And I subsequently pulled him out of the school. And that summer I encountered Deirdre at Freedom Fest, where you and I have been many times, and was like, okay, you're the only person I know that has been through this. Am I losing my mind, or is this crazy? Like, this is crazy, right? Is it not? Am I a bigot? Like, I grew up in, like a typical Gen Xer being kind of homophobic and all this stuff. So maybe I'm just a bigot. And Deirdre was very like, no, that's crazy. And that was my first encounter. And that was really before things went hyperbolic. Why did this go hyperbolic like it did? Why did this become something that has moved presidential campaigns? Why has this become something where Disney felt compelled to have trans characters in shows from your perspective? Because that does seem to have happened right around that time.
It was around that time. So what I have seen, and I don't like talking about the slippery slope fallacy. I call it a slippery slope fallacy because people try to use slippery slopes as the idea that we shouldn't have done something good in order to save something bad in the future from happening.
Like opening up gay marriage.
That's exactly where I was going with it. So in 2015, gay marriage was legalized. And so I agree that I don't think the government should be involved in marriage in the first place, but if it's going to be equal, it should be equal across the board. But all those activists, the normal gays, as J.D. Vance called them, said, you know what, we've got all of our rights. We have full equality at this point in time. We can just go home. But all those activists, the HRC, the GLAADs, the organizations, they still need the money. They're nonprofits. They need the money. The activists still need the money. And so it was what was it? It was about the summer of 2016. Charlotte, North Carolina passes the first. So they pass a city ordinance that says we're going to force private businesses to allow self-ID bathrooms. So you can go into whatever bathroom you want as long as you self-ID into that category.
I remember this. Yeah, this was the beginning, the bathroom
That was it.
Controversy.
So Charlotte, North Carolina, the Democrats in Charlotte, North Carolina basically baited the Republicans in the state legislature to pass the first sweeping bathroom ban. So now you have a full force, and then you have a ban. And there's really not a lot of people talking about the nuance in the middle that you could have like with private businesses and stuff like that. And that was the backlash that was basically heard around the world. When that bill passed, it created all the chaos, and now the whole pride movement moved into trans access, trans rights. Kind of left all the normal gays out to dry, because when you really think about queer theory, which was developed in the early 1990s, in the 1990s, when you think about queer theory, it's a postmodernist, it's a critical theory, so it's postmodern neo-marxism. And they don't believe in sexuality. That's why now you're starting to see that if you don't date a trans person, then you're big, or you're transphobic. It's like, wait a second, you're telling lesbians that they have to date a trans woman if they, are still intact and they're a male? That's homophobic. But they're claiming it's transphobic because they don't see sexuality the same way. They don't believe in sexuality. And so there's these different facets, and the pride movement went full queer theory, and that's what everybody dove in on. And now a lot of politicians are pushing into it because they don't want to be seen as phobic. Because one side is so concerned about being phobic, and that's why they use it as an attack on the other side. And then there's the radical middle, the radical libertarians are like, just do what you want, just don't hurt people.
Yeah, and this is, I will say, it's like there's multiple layers of the issue. With the centerpiece of it being what's happened with kids and self-identification. But I want to keep on this thread about, so because you're a political animal, like you're literally like in the mix of it, trying to actually like you're like a villain for the trans people because you're going out there banning the things that these activists say they want.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. But this there's a ground game. There are these organizations. There's a industrial complex of these nonprofits. But how does that? Okay, so when was that again? Was it 2016?
2016 was the full bathroom fight in North Carolina.
So that's also like that. What role does Donald Trump's election play in further like pushing, let's say, otherwise like non-crazy Democrats to adopt what is essentially a fairly radical position on this issue? Because do you think that played a role, that because Trump was treated divisively, and he has divisive rhetoric, but people should take ownership of their responses to him. So the left goes crazy against Trump. Does that play a role in this getting even more like gas on the fire? I
think it becomes it becomes a divisive issue, and you have the Democratic Party is completely unified. That's one thing that they do very well, is that they will unify around whatever issue. So whatever their leaders say, they will do, and you cannot go away from that party. And that's why so many people have left the left, right? So there's so many people that they say, I didn't leave the left at me because it went crazy. And so that's what you're seeing, a lot of these more politically homeless people coming out, because they're like, I don't like where this has gone. But the politicians, they still need to get elected, and most of them are in the same districts that they're getting elected. And so they're going to be able to maintain, and they just want to push whatever the narrative is that their party's pushing. Because most of these people are just yes men that are just going to do whatever they say, whatever their political backers say. And so there was a tone when Donald Trump was elected in 2016 that divided the country into basically two factions. And now you're seeing that there's almost three factions, because there's a lot of people that are like, I don't agree with what they're saying over here, but I also don't agree with what you're saying. So where do I go? I'm just going to be right here politically homeless and then just play the game. So there's a lot of centrists. The center is probably getting bigger, and the extremes are getting smaller, I think.
That's interesting to hear that. And I want to come back to that, because in a way, I think that's healthy.
Yeah, I agree.
I think I'm in that camp. I think our viewers, on the basis of how my attacks sometimes come from both sides, would say you're kind of a little too squishy, Popola. Okay, so we have, going back to that bathroom bill. Mm-hmm. Do you believe that you sort of framed it as the Democrats knew they were going to provoke a reaction? Do you think that was what was actually happening, or is that not entirely fair?
That's my theory. I mean, I do believe that throughout, political history, we do see this happen quite a bit, where one party will make a move and the other party will go completely extreme the other way. And I do think that it was a baiting tool, because you had a Republican legislator, Republican governor of North Carolina. In fact, the last Republican governor of North Carolina is the one that signed that bill. And so it kind of caused a backlash within that state. And then you saw the entire political apparatus come at that state with all their money. If you remember, the NCAA Final Four was supposed to be in Raleigh, North Carolina that year, and they pulled out. It's a lot of money for those people on the ground.
Right.
And so I do think that there was some political calculations as to what the responsibility of the city council of Charlotte, North Carolina has there. I think that there was some political strategy behind that.
So you have this bathroom controversy. At the same time, there's the sports issue. And I feel like one of the earliest voices on this that was kind of popular was Joe Rogan talking about MMA in particular. And it's extreme there, because MMA is, I used to be one of the creative directors at Spike TV, which launched in the US UFC. And so one of the things that's so powerful about UFC is it is like a death match for your capabilities. Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of buddies who are really into martial arts, like, okay, this sort of resolved the dispute, which is better, Taekwondo or judo or jujitsu, and like jujitsu has mostly won, but boxing and wrestling can be helpful. Like, but it's as intensely physical, optimal. You got to be the best of the best to be in it. Mm-hmm. And so Joe Rogan, so help me help put that in context for me. Where is that happening in this timeline?
Yeah. So when was that? That was, I think, 2019, 2020, maybe a little bit earlier than that. So because Fallon Fox is the first MMA fighter that came out. And that caused that's what actually did cause a lot of the controversy with males and female sports. And that was one of the first things, because you have this male beating women.
Yes.
And it's like, when you start to see that, most people look at that and go, that's not right. And when you then hear the competitors that fought against Fallon Fox being like, I've never been hit that hard before.
Yeah.
And breaking a woman's skull and stuff like that. That really struck a nerve with a lot of people for good reason. And so I think that was around 2020 timeframe. And it's like, yeah, there's just, and that's when a lot of stuff like, so they've shown punching power in and of itself is one of those things where you can't get rid of that advantage. And males punch a lot harder than females, even at the same size and same muscle capacity and everything. It's like 200%. For males. And so that was like the strike that, and then you get moving into the whole, I think then there was Alana McLaughlin who was a former like SF officer who was fighting. And it was just
SF officer?
SF.
What does that mean?
U.S. military.
Okay, but what does SF stand for?
Special Forces.
Special Forces, okay.
So like when you're like Navy SEALs or something like that. starts taking hormones and then starts fighting in the MMA. Like never done anything and is beating females in their first fights and like knocking them out. Like never competing before that. And so I think when Dana White had it right when he said there will never be a man competing with women in the UFC. The UFC will not allow this, but it's so the other organizations I think are starting to catch on because I think it's banned completely in all the other MMA stuff. But we're still fighting that fight when it comes to all the other sports today. And Donald Trump just signed the EO to basically enforce Title IX. But you still need to change the culture that says these private sports organizations that it's not even in their best interest to allow males to compete with them.
So there's a couple other cultural touchstone moments that are worth putting on the table for the full picture. One is, and I don't remember again when this was. I'm pretty sure it was pre-2020. Was Caitlyn Jenner and Caitlyn Jenner? I'm forgetting his name before he transitioned.
Bruce Jenner.
Bruce Jenner, right? Yeah. So you have Bruce Jenner, father to part of the Kardashians, the biggest TV show in the world. So you got all this attention. I remember the promos for the like reveal. It's like Bruce as Caitlyn, like walking through like like white curtains blowing in the wind and with this very like flowery music playing, very celebratory.
Yeah.
And then there's the Manning incident.
The Chelsea
Manning.
I think
that was earlier.
That was like 2013, 2014 time.
So there's a couple things that are popping along the way.
Yeah.
Setting the stage for this to become culturally.
Yeah.
I think along the lines of Jenner would also be Ellen Page transitioning to being Elliot Page.
Yeah. Yep.
So taking a couple steps back from any particular case, why do you think the broader cultural institutions went all in? Is it just cultural left-wing stuff? Like, oh, it's all...
Yeah, I don't know if there was any like rhyme or reason. It was like, oh, this person. I mean, they framed it as this person's so brave for doing this, right? Because this is such a. At that point in time, I guess it would be like a cultural paradox, right? It's like you're not it's not something that's normalized in society. So you're the first person stepping out, and you're such a big name to step out. So like when you mentioned like Caitlyn Jenner is a good example because like that was the first person and kind of started a lot of this stuff, which is kind of amazing because now Caitlyn's against males and female sports. And I had an issue until about last December with Caitlyn. And I said, I don't think you can really be a good speaker on this until you give back that Woman of the Year award that you accepted. Caitlyn gave back the award last December, said, I can't advocate for this. Yes, I have to acknowledge the responsibility the role I had in playing and promoting this early on. But the best thing for me to do now is accept that and apologize and say this isn't right. And so I shouldn't have been given that award that was meant for a woman. And so I don't know if it is. I think that Hollywood has this idea that they want to push this like full DEI inclusion stuff. And that was kind of where it started even in that. So we want to, any diversity that we can have, we want to promote it.
I mean, having come up through entertainment, it's absolutely the case for reasons that are probably easy to talk about generically, and maybe they're right and maybe they're not. Like gays being good at design. Like, do I know that that's scientifically true? I don't. But you go to an art school or you go to the theater department in your high school, you're probably going to find more homosexuals.
Yeah.
It just is what it is.
It's a fact of life that just you don't know.
It's like, and that's interesting. Like, what is it about being more feminine that like aligns with being creative? There's something there. Was Michelangelo gay? That people think he was gay? I don't know. Yeah. but I will say, having come up through entertainment, the entertainment industry over-indexes for homosexuality. It just does. Mm-hmm. You're going to find more gay people in entertainment, in the arts, than on an oil rig.
Yeah.
Or in the STEM department. Mm-hmm. That's interesting. Something's going on there. But that does, I would think that is part of the story. You got a bunch of creatives.
Yeah.
This is allyship. This is standing together against what seems like the new wave of bigotry. So now it's okay, so this is where LGBTQIA plus two spirit. Oh, this is where the alphabet.
I mean, you actually did that pretty good. I don't even know if that's right, but yeah.
Because it's like, what is it? What's the IA? There's like asexual, and then it's like,
Well, I think you have to put the two S in front.
yeah, two S in there somewhere. So that's two spirit, whatever that's supposed to mean. It's some Native American thing that I think is concocted and like retconned. I don't know.
Yeah, I think you're right. I have no idea.
But in fair, like, so that seems like what's going on. Is that how you see part of what's happening?
Yeah, I mean, you make a really good point that I hadn't really thought about when it comes to the entertainment industry. Is yes, it does tend to be more effeminate, and even the men tend to be more effeminate. The theater kids and stuff like that tend to be more homosexual. So when they gain all their rights, now they want to go out there and help their younger siblings, right? And we need to give you your rights. We need your rights are being taken. That's the way it's being framed, at least, right? It's not necessarily the case, but your rights are being taken. So now we got to go get you your rights. Let's all fight together. Hurrah, hurrah! And then you have celebrities getting awards from those activist organizations that we talked about earlier. You have the GLAAD awards. They're giving it to different LGBT. Whatever you just said, or like people that are in film and industry. It's kind of like this new awards show, just like you would have like the Oscars, like who can be the most accepting of actors and actresses, and so they start to push even more in that direction to be, quote, good allies.
Well, and I think that as a Christian, like, it's not hard to, I don't think it's crazy to say like, oh, if Jesus were alive today, he would be the first, he'd like jump into the breach here and be like, I love you. Yeah. That's who he was. I mean, we're sitting here, it's Easter this Sunday. This will come out after, but he was hanging out with prostitutes and tax collectors, which for you and I, like the tax collector is really the worst villain of all.
I mean, they were seen as murderers, they were seen as the same as murderers. So yeah, I agree.
But so I think there's an open-heartedness that I can respect and love, and that I think is actually fundamentally good. It's good to be open-hearted and charitable to people. Mm-hmm. And then even for myself, and I talked about this with Andrew, it's like I grew up in like a South Philly Italian family. So like that's all weirdo stuff. Like none of that. Like that's all weird. Mm-hmm. And so I grew up very homophobic. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't actually until I worked in the entertainment industry that I sort of just became like more tolerant. Like, okay, you're a human.
Yeah.
And I had bosses who were gay. I've had neighbors who were gay basically since my entire adult life. And so I am a more accepting person than I was as a teenager. And I have felt that acceptance start to recede in the face of all of this stuff. The trans and the trans in sports, but especially the messaging aimed at kids, going all the way down to kindergarten.
Yeah.
Like, what is your total worldview on what's being done here when it comes to the schools and kids in particular? As someone who has experienced this firsthand.
I think we should just let our kids grow up and be themselves and let them learn arithmetic in schools and let them figure things out on their own and let their parents help them guide them through these situations. And it shouldn't be on the schools. The schools don't need these organizations that are essentially pushing a lot of this stuff onto children. In fact, that was one of the bills I was working on in Louisiana, was a bill that basically so they were doing like sex ed down to 5 years old to push gender identity. And you're just going, what is going on here? Like, so I understand like the acceptance rate and why it's dropping, because it's like, everything's good. Just be yourself, do what you do. Just don't mess with my kids. Like, and so when it's really bad though, because they're being secretive about it. So the laws that we worked on in Louisiana was like, if a child comes to you and wants to change their name and pronoun to a teacher, you have to get parental written permission that says that that's okay. So parents have to actually be informed that their kid's going through something about this type of stuff. I agree with the Florida bill as well, to where it was yeah, anytime that a child is having gender issues like this, and if they express that to you, you have to tell those parents. And when you start to see some of this stuff happen, you see that those kids actually need mental health counseling. And by schools preventing parents from knowing, it actually prevents them from getting the mental health counseling that they need. And we saw this in Florida. It's what actually sparked the quote unquote "Don't Say Gay" bill. In South Florida, there was a child who had been going by a different name and pronoun at school, but they didn't tell the parents. That child did attempt suicide twice in 2 days. And those parents didn't even know. And the school used their Christian faith as if they wouldn't be accepting of their kid or get their kid the help that they needed. And so that's what prompted a lot of these bills. And that's exactly what you're saying, though. And that's what's spreading across the country. And people are seeing this. They're like, I don't really care. I've never really cared too much about this. You can just do you. But when you start to, push it onto children, and they start to manipulate parents into transitioning children, like you had talked about earlier, where doctors are putting these ideas into parents' heads. It puts parents in a no-win situation sometimes. And they do teach the kids how to manipulate the situation. Because if you think about the idea that a parent or somebody saying, if you don't do what I want, then I'm going to commit suicide.
It's emotional blackmail.
That's what I was going to say. It's an emotional abuse tactic that abusers use, like, oh, if you leave me, I'm going to do this. And that it's to keep somebody there. So it's an emotional blackmail tactic that is meant to cause parents distress. I know, like my friend Chloe Cole, she's talked about it. She's a detransitioner, and she said she never felt suicidal, but the doctors told her parents that in front of her. And it put that idea into her head that maybe if I don't do this, that could be the outcome, that I might do this. So it's almost putting that outcome in their head, even when they're not actually feeling that way.
This is the part that speaks to my earlier my soliloquy open of anxiety, which is you have this question of social contagion and the impressionability of children. And this is where, frankly, whatever libertarian impulses I have become put in the trunk, not just the back seat, compared to this, which is like, I don't know how to think about what it means to be tolerant. I don't know what to think. My inclination. So you said you were feeling uncomfortable in your body going as early as you can literally remember. How should I, as a parent, think about that if that's happening to my child and if they're telling me that from an early age?
If they're going through this, and this is what so the studies are showing it now too, right? So we do know that I always say that a circle or a square is a rectangle, but a rectangle is not a square. So 90% of the kids that feel like that sometime through their life will outgrow it by the age of 20. Typically, puberty is the cure for those feelings. So you have to allow them to go through puberty. I don't think that you can accurately diagnose gender dysphoria until that person is at least an adult. And that's why I think that we need to allow that's when you talk about like pushing on, like your libertarian stuff goes out the window. I agree. I've actually been asked before, how can you disagree with kids being able to do this if you're a libertarian? I say, well, even in the most anarchist society, we would still protect children. Like we would protect children, and that the society would protect children. So I believe that in the system that we have and working within the system that we have, we do have to protect children. But yeah, I think that you just allow children to explore, do what they do. Social transitions. If a boy wants to wear a dress, okay, whatever. Because I think that can go both directions, right? If you're extreme to the conservative side, to where you're saying that dresses are girls' clothes and boys can't wear those, and you're telling your son that you can't wear a dress, that's a girl's thing. It could also put in that idea into your son's mind that goes, well, if I like dresses and dresses are for girls, then maybe I am a girl. So it could also do the exact opposite. So I do just think you let your children express themselves however they want, explore, and then work with them to make sure that they're not having like mental anxiety, and get them to an adulthood. And at that point, maybe then it really is gender dysphoria. But you can't be diagnosed until adulthood.
There's so many threads here, and I want to work through them together because it's a rare opportunity to talk about this in this way with you, for me. One is, okay, so I'm your dad, and you're 4, and I noticed this, and I'm not. I love you.
Yeah.
I'm your dad.
Yeah.
And I'm me, John Papola. So my first reaction is, you're going to outgrow this. You're confused. Kids think they're all kinds of crazy stuff. It persists. Okay, so I'm uncomfortable, but I love you because you're my son. Now, let's leave aside. I want to bring back in the medical stuff because I had Dr. Haim on the show earlier last year, who blew the whistle on Texas Children's Hospital pushing stuff.
I met her yesterday.
Oh,
at the Capitol.
Yeah, that's good. So, we're on the allies cut in different directions in this conversation. So, but okay. So now you're coming into 10. There's this photo slide that is sort of one of those viral things that you'll click at the bottom of a website where it's this father and son who's taken pictures of them holding each other like through the entire life. They're I don't know if they're Korean or, and you can watch 10, 11, 12, 13 is like round-faced little boy, but man. It's this really important moment biologically, this transformation that takes place. So we hit that, and you're still feeling this way. And now it's like, well, what am I supposed to do about this? So help me out. Walk me through, because I don't know about letting you go to school in a dress. I don't know about that. What's the impact on the other kids if you're suddenly going to school in a dress? Help me on, what's the right thing to do here?
I still think you allow them to go through that. Because sometimes you learn understanding through uncomfortability. So if your child's going through that and they're uncomfortable in that situation, then maybe it's not the right situation for them. Maybe that is what's carrying it, because they're realizing that the way that society is viewing them is never going to be the way that they would view themselves or the way that they want to view themselves in that situation. So maybe they realize maybe this isn't the right thing for me. But even again, you start looking through. Just look at through even the last history of the last 20, 30 years. I mean, with what we're seeing now, so much of it's been accepted. But I remember when I was in, middle school, high school, we had the goth kids and they would all dress weird. And it was kind of,
for sure.
So I feel like a lot of this is the way that the social contagion is happening right now. It feels a lot like that, except for they're medicalizing these children. And that's the big difference. You're permanently sterilizing some of these children. And it's like, if this could just be the goth era. So you have the goth era, you have the scene era, you have the emo era, and now this non-binary era is just an extension of that.
It's David Bowie 2.0.
Yeah. And I think that's where we're at in society, and that's why it would still be okay to just go out and express yourself any way that you want. And that's really what it is. It's just self-expression at the end of the day when it comes to clothes and everything like that. It's when you really start to medicalize that it becomes a dangerous thing.
So one of the pieces that's hard about these issues, not just because of the children, but because of the community and the network effects, is, so I talked to a friend of my son, who was, unsure, is he bisexual? Is he gay? I don't know. And I just asked him, I was like, I remember going back to middle school, high school, and you're trying to feel out your identity. And are you a goth kid? Or what are you? What feels right? What dress feels right? And if you came to school, I remember one time it was I went to 12 years of Catholic school, for what it's worth, for better and worse. And, for one of the dress down Fridays, I came to school in kind of all black and white stuff. And a bunch of the kids came up to me like, "Are you goth now? Is that what's happening? Are you a skater?" I think that's what it was, a skater. This is the early 90s. Oh, I wore shorts that had skulls on them. John, are you a skater now? And I tell it's funny and it's silly, but there's this like, well, do I accept this identity or not? But also, once I put it out there, there's like a cost of reversing course.
Yeah.
There's like now I sort of have a certain amount of pressure to stay the course. And I've heard that social transitioning has a radically increases the likelihood of medical transitioning. Is that, do you know?
I don't
have
know
you
about
heard this? Do you know if this is true? Help me out with this.
So actually one of the first op-eds I ever wrote was about the sunk cost fallacy that comes with transition, right? It's the deeper you get in. And so if you think about it in terms of finance and you start, the investments that you make, at some point you may start to question that these investments aren't right. They might start losing money and you're going, maybe this isn't right. But I've already invested so much already, I might as well keep going. I might invest more. And that's kind of what I do see that. And that's why I actually would say that social transition isn't necessarily a zero-sum game, because the moment that you actually do, change your name and change your pronouns and what people refer to you as, it's like you go through that and then it's like, well, now my parents are calling me this, my grandparents, I've forced everybody around me to start changing the way that they treat me because of this. And it's not a zero sum. It's an investment. You've invested some emotional capital. And then just to go back and say, I made a mistake and maybe I just want to go back and do this. Now, as a parent, I think that as a parent, if it comes down into this and you're allowing your child to socially transition, I wouldn't necessarily go with the name changes. And I don't think that like the pronoun changes and stuff like that, not necessarily. But I think if you're going down that route, you also have to continuously tell your child, hey, if this isn't the right thing to do, you can go back. Like we're not invested into this. But then, yeah, there is like, once you get on puberty blockers, there is a 98% chance that you're going to go on cross-sex hormones later. And that is the first major permanent step of that sunk cost fallacy, because you've already changed your body now into a way that you cannot change it back. And then once you go on hormones, then it's the next step. If you're a male, you've permanently sterilized yourself at that point. If you're female, you've changed your voice. You've got hair on your body now in different places. So you are seeing those effects. And then the last step is the surgery, and you just can't reverse surgeries. They try to claim you can. They try to claim, oh, if you're a female and you get breast augmentation, then you get a double mastectomy, you can just get breast augmentation later. But it doesn't work like that. And it was like Chloe Cole, her story too was like, she wanted to breastfeed her children and she probably will never be able to. And that's the heartbreaking reality that these kids need to hear before they go through these changes and understand why they can't make these permanent changes. But when it comes down to it, the deeper you get into it, and hearing a lot of detransitioners talk in different ways, it's like they did keep going further than what they were comfortable with when they started questioning whether this was the right step, because they were like, I've already gone too deep into it. So there is that aspect where if you do start to, this is why the gender affirming model completely doesn't work, because you have to let them know that it's okay, go back. It's okay to stop at any point in this. And I won't love you any less either way. We're not too deep into this. You're never too deep into this, because I think that is one of the reasons why the suicidality rate ends up being high, just as high, if not higher, after transition, is because people feel like they've made a mistake and then they can't go back.
Well, and I want to spend time on that in a minute, but to stay, because the threat of that is also shocking, and it's something that I heard a lot about from Dr. Haim and others in that episode, which we'll put a link to. Mm-hmm. But so this is the hard challenge. You're my son. You're saying that this is how you feel. I'm not in denial about that this has been going on for a long time. How tight of a grip should I have with your experimentation at this stage where you're still a child, you're early adolescent, and I don't have control over how everyone else reacts as your parent. So I get the idea that, well, hey, if you just say, no, only girls wear dresses, be a man, put on jeans and a t-shirt, knock it off. Or more lovingly, you're going to outgrow this. I know this is how you feel, but just trust me. Just if you want to put on a dress in your bedroom and look in the mirror, that's fine. You don't want to do that in public. You don't want to invite all that scrutiny and all that pressure. It's very hard for that this is the first friction point for me trying to be as empathetic as I can, where I can't help but feel like if I allow you, my son, to go out into the world this way, that the psychological barrage that is going to come next, I don't see how you could be prepared for it. And that feels wrong to me to allow you to subject yourself to it. And so help me, like, I guess it's just a judgment call, but like, should the bias be don't do that? Like, wear a dress in your bedroom, look in the mirror, figure that out. Let's wait and see. Help me understand.
Well, I would agree with you that the bias should be to caution heavily, be like, you realize, like, this is like, people are not going to necessarily be nice to the way that they treat you. You're not going to be necessarily comfortable. I understand where you're feeling, but you're not ready to even be in this political realm, because we're in a politically charged atmosphere once that happens. And then even as a parent, now people are questioning you, like, are you a transhausen parent who's pushing this on your kid? And then you're feeling it too.
Transhausen? Well, I haven't heard that term. So that sounds about right. That sounds like half of Hollywood.
Yeah, so it's a transhausen.
I have 4 kids. They're all trans. It's like, yeah, right. Half of them are adopted and they're trans. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. What are the odds of this?
Okay,
yeah, so
Charisse Theron. It's like, all right, I don't know about what's happening here.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually interesting story. Is that's why the Southern Poverty Law Center wrote about me one time, is because Kim Klacik asked why this isn't happening in the hood. I said because it's mostly upper middle class white progressive females who are pushing this on their children so that they can have those woke points, because they've been told so much through especially like critical race theory that they're an oppressor. And they
get out of oppression jail free card.
They can never escape that oppressor status. But if you can self-ID into an oppressed status, or if you have an oppressed child, then you can push that on there. And so it's an interesting take, which I believe when you look at critical theory and how it promotes the oppressor and oppressed class, and then you see all these parents almost seemingly celebrating and pushing it on their kids, then yeah, you can see where that is viable.
So, okay, so then I'm at this point where it's a bit of a breaking point at some sense. There's a serious demand by my child to experiment with this in public. It has persisted for a long time. I don't know what to do about it, but I can feel maybe that if you don't let me do this, I'm like it's like starting to harm the relationship and the trust and the sense that you are listening to me, Dad. You're not hearing me. You're not seeing me. I'm serious about this. I'm trying to really understand this.
Yeah.
So you go out into the world in a dress, and half the guys at school make fun of you, and then suddenly the misfit kids embrace you.
Yeah.
Right. So play this out for me.
No, I think you're on a path that could bring that in, because you're right, because you do then find your community that will accept you. And then what starts to happen is almost cult-like, to where they will start to, they will start to implant ideas into your child as well. Oh, your dad's not accepting of you? Oh, well, we'll be your family now. And that's the scariest part about it, is because they will start to pull you into their community. And so I guess that's when you, just like you would never, you don't want your child hanging out with the class troublemaker who's always getting into trouble and everything like that. You just have a very close tie to who your friends are hanging out with, know your kids, and sometimes trust that they're not going to push you away. But I understand the dilemma. It's very difficult to just completely be like, wait a second, I know how this community actually acts. And that is part of the acceptance that you're talking about, because this community they want to separate from families, because again, that's that queer theory, the postmodern, it's neo-marxism to end the family structure. And so that's why they're kind of driving that wedge between parents and child.
But even before we get to the level to because I want to talk deeper about the philosophical things, because I know you understand it. But just at the level of the typical, like you were saying,
Yeah.
like you don't want to get in with the wrong crowd, but like I remember the theater kids and the goth kids, and they were it's cliques.
Yeah.
So then you want to fit in more because that's what we are. We're social creatures. So once you're in, then you form bonds, and then the cost of exit from that goes up. Oh, if this is making me uncomfortable, now I'm going to lose these new friends that I've really enjoyed having. So it's not just the discomfort, it's there's social costs just mount for each decision you're making along the line here. I don't know that there's an answer.
No, I agree. It's a very complex issue, and it is a case by case issue, and how you are with your kids, and I think that at the end of the day, though, we just say, I don't like. Okay, fine, do this, but we're not medicalizing. That is the line in the sand. We're gonna go to church. We're not gonna medicalize. You're gonna. Maybe you have stipulations like you don't wear that to church, but you're finding it all the other time and all this stuff, right? You just stipulate this stuff. You work with your child and see what works for you, and also I would just say no social media, because that's where a lot of this comes in. A lot of this is they're finding this on social media. And then that's a lot of ideas being put into their head as well.
Well, also it cuts both ways, right? Because if you've got your Instagram and you're suddenly leaving a permanent record of a choice that may be temporary,
Yep.
That's another cost you've left for your future
Absolutely.
self to try to think about. Like, oh,
now I have to delete these, and or it's just a digital footprint because the internet's forever. And that's what I don't think even any child right now is really understanding is what you post on social media or what you put on the internet will last forever. I think that's something that really needs to be ingrained. If I had kids, it would no social media until at least 16 years old, right? It's like that would be like where it would be.
So it's a kind of inescapably social decision in the sense that once you're out there in the world, all these other forces and judgment and friendships and costs of making changes are taking place. Then there's now we step back out to because that's all humans, that's all kids and their problems, that's our neighbors.
Yeah.
And everybody's on social and everybody's political and they're putting their signs in their yard. But now so now we get to the politics and the philosophy. That's bearing down on that, and it's a bank shot. Chances are your neighbor is not a gender studies professor at UT. They're just a normal person. But now there's so explain how you understand what this philosophy is. You said it, like the postmodern neo-marxist gender queer stuff, the Judith Butler type stuff. What is it? Who are these people? What do they actually believe? And steelman it. Help me understand what it is.
Yeah, so obviously they believe, obviously postmodernism, the idea that there's no such thing as absolute truth. Tie that with neo-Marxism to where the state runs your families, that there is no real such thing as family structure because everything is done to be part of the state. And we see this kind of playing out in politics today where your kids don't belong to you type stuff. Remember like the famous quotes from like Joe Biden even and saying stuff like that. And so go back to, and the interesting thing, so you go back to even the John Money experiments back in the 70s, and you look to see that was the first, like the godfather of gender ideology, they would say, and it was that nature over, it was nature over, or nurture over nature, right? So
this is the guy. This is the was he a psychiatrist? What was he exactly?
I think he was a psychiatrist. So his idea though was that it was part of. So there's two twins, the Reimer twins, who one of them had a botched circumcision, and said so because of this I think we can raise this child as a girl, and they'll just socially. They'll be a girl, and that's all they'll never know, and that will be fine for them because there is no nature component to the brain and everything like this. Obviously, that didn't work out because They found out later on that they were not a girl, and they had been lied to their entire lives and ended up committing suicide. And then the twin brother also had issues in the same way, same outcome.
And there was abuse and all kinds of crazy stuff involved.
And so, and I think that was the part of it was like John Money was like
just a creep.
Oh yeah, very much so, and very much a aspect of that. Move on to the Judith Butlers in early 1990s. You have queer theory start to develop under the guise of critical theory. Most critical theories, just like critical race theory, all this stuff. You see the same tenets starting to be laid out in gender studies courses, that there is no such thing as, like, sex doesn't matter, sex and gender are different, and that you can identify into whatever sex you want. And that's kind of the basis behind queer theory, is because, like, the postmodern aspect is you're whatever. Sex is a spectrum, and or gender is a spectrum, and there's no absolutes in the world. So you can just be what you want to be or what you feel like you are, and so feelings over science, essentially.
Biology.
Yeah.
There's been a couple instances of this in pop culture that you can just see. You can see the direct line between these ivory tower, utopian radicals and just pop culture. And that is Jon Stewart on Apple TV did an entire episode about this, in which he described gender the way it's a spectrum. And there's there's different, and it's conflating
sex-based stereotypes.
Yeah, it's very, very weird, because it's actually it's conflating a concept. If you start with, I'm going to work through this as someone that's like I don't know anything, which is mostly true. All right, so we start off with male and female, which I had Brett Weinstein and Heather Hang on the show, and they're like, look, large gametes, small gametes, flower, pollen. It's in plants. It's in everything. Yep. It's all sexual dimorphism. Binary sex is a fact.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's it. Male, female. So once you've jumped from male, female to that there's a thing called gender that's not sex, that already feels like there's a leap that's been made there that's non-trivial.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess let's start with that. How do you think about that leap? Do you think that is a legitimate conceptual leap, that there's a thing called gender that's not simply sex?
No. So this is where we go with this too, because going back into queer theory and postmodernism, if you erase the definitions of words, so think of what the word man means. Well, if to a postmodernist, it means anything you want it to be. If you feel it, then it is.
It's the "what is a woman" thing from Matt Walsh.
That's exactly what it is.
Well, a woman is anyone that says they're a woman, which is just circular nonsense.
Yeah, and so that's part of the issue is you can't define it, because without using the word in there, it's just whoever identifies as a woman. But what is a woman then? And it's just circular. So you just keep going in circles, and that's how they get you arguing about this stuff. Whereas in reality, if you wanted to say that gender wasn't a meaningless thing, then it would be, a man is an adult human male. And so you can't change that. You can't change your sex in the same way as you're saying. Same as a woman's an adult human female, and you have to acknowledge those biological realities. The problem is, and this is kind of how we go into the activism space of this, is activists they use the gender language because they understand their ideas are not necessarily, they can't debate their ideas. And so they will get these language traps. So trans women are women. Well, what's a woman? And then you get debating on just trying to get to the same definition. If you're going to have a debate on something, you have to work from the same set of definitions. You have to work from the same, you have to have an understanding before you can do anything as to what the word means. So if you start arguing about what a woman is, rather than should we be doing this to children, then you're completely arguing about the wrong thing, and you should be arguing about the actual thing that's harming people. And so, or males and female sports. So that's what, if you notice, I use sex-based terms because I do absolutely believe gender is a completely meaningless term at this point. And it's used almost by both sides to not argue about issues and to keep kicking that can down the road. Because I do think activists will continue to kick the can down the road for as long as they can, because they understand the longer they can drag this out, especially under this administration and this term right now, is the longer they can kick this stuff down the road, then they can get their stuff. They can basically put it in a holding pattern, and then when their people get into office, then they do the meaningful work that they want to do. So personally, I think we just need to go back to using sex-based terms, male, female, because like I said, even like, so on the right, the radical feminists is what I would call them. If I go out there and say a trans woman is a subsection of men, they will say trans isn't real. You can't change your sex. I would say I agree with that, but trans is a identifier for somebody who has gender dysphoria, who's actually taking the steps to appear differently to society. And they would be like, but you're not any kind of woman. I'm like, I agree with that too. Trans women are a subsection of men. But that's where we get to argue on the side that we would normally agree with. They're arguing about terms, and I'm just wanting to talk about the actual things that we can do to coexist together, right? Like what types of centrist middle ground understanding can we get to actually, like, again, coexist in a harmonious way, where we have these, where this isn't a big deal, and we're fighting about politics, and we're fighting about the economy, we're fighting about tariffs, we're fighting about foreign wars, and we're not fighting about identity.
Well, it's like, and I think this is you really have such a unique take on this, because you in some ways you're like radically on the other side of the thing, being sitting here as Sarah, who is a biological man. That's all crazy. So for the viewers, brain scrambling pleasure. Okay, so all right, so then you and I are on the same page, frankly, that this leap from male female to then, but gender's a spectrum, is right away not is a political activist tactic, and that is what it is. Yeah. It is language games. Yeah, exactly. It is postmodern language games. Let's move us from descriptive reality to power play, and now we get to fight, and now I get to call you names. Because the other piece of the puzzle that you were pointing to about stereotypes is, when you move into this space, you create this really weird self-contradictory thing, which is also like super self-destructive. And this is Heather Hang's point. She's like, I was a tomboy. Does that mean I'm a boy?
No.
Like this, like if I'm masked, so like we do have these two words that are useful, although super complicated, masculine and feminine. Mm-hmm. So how do you think about those two terms?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, yeah. So like masculine and feminine would be, essentially, it is more the stereotypical way that people present themselves. And you in that way, you don't, it's not sex-based necessarily, because you can have masculine women and feminine men. And that's completely fine. It's however it is. Like you said, tomboys and feminine boys have always been a thing, but they didn't call themselves anything other than that. And so when you get down into the root of like the trans issues, even like like the diagnosis for gender dysphoria is sex-based. So and that's why the activists will actually say that you don't need gender dysphoria to be trans. And I'm like, that's complete nonsense. Why? What's the point, right? And it is based off of those sexist stereotypes. It's like, okay, well, how do you know what it means to be a woman? I don't know what it means to be a woman. I never went through female puberty. I don't, have those parts. I don't have a period. I don't have all this stuff that is part of the female experience, and that is biologically sex-based. But I can dress a certain way, which would be considered a stereotypical masculine way or a stereotypical feminine way. Now, again, gender dysphoria itself it's written as an uncomfortability with your secondary sex characteristics. And that's where I think a lot of people get it wrong, is because it really is what you're seeing in the mirror is not what you like, and you wish that it was that of the opposite sex. And so when you change the body, it creates the perception to you, and you're presenting yourself. And I would consider it extreme body modification, to be real. And it's extreme body modification, and for a very small portion of people, it helps. And it used to be like something like 0.01%. And now it's like 5%. You know?
Well, okay, so so masculine, feminine, even those ideas, they're rooted, and some of it is culturally particular in that, hey, you go back to like France in the, Victorian era, and the men are quite dandy.
Yeah.
And so sure, there is a certain amount of like cultural particulars.
Yeah.
Like, what does it mean to be like long flowing? Like, are dresses really masculine? Well, they're or feminine. Like, well, it depends. I guess you could say it depends on what time period and country. But by and large, it seems like it's fair to say that masculine and feminine is a one derivative away from the underlying sex. Like, it is the case that like male chimps like to play with trucks.
Yeah.
Like boys like to play with trucks, and female chimps will actually like take the truck and treat it like a baby, just like female humans will prefer dolls. And there's a direct, like, Jordan Peterson, who we haven't talked about yet, but Jordan Peterson talks about this, that this can't be broken and abstracted from each other, that the sex characteristics that masculinity, femininity are directly tied to, but with some springs or something, underlying male, female, to and then there's this variation. To stay in philosophy land, because I want to come to the psychological part next, but to stay in philosophy land, there is a video that maybe you've seen. It is a professor, I believe his name was Derek, and he says, let's play a game. You can hear his class. All you're seeing is him, and you can hear the class going crazy in different ways. And he's like, all right, let's play gender theory Jeopardy. And he basically argues that all of the major figures in queer theory Jeopardy it was called.
Okay.
So that's the search term to find this on YouTube. And this is going to be uncomfortable, but I'm recounting his thing. That basically they all have a normalization of pedophilia wrapped up in their storytelling. Judith Butler, Foucault, there was like two other people that are mentioned. But that there's this like hyper transgressive knock down all the sexual barriers, including between adults and children. So let's just spend some time on this, because this is like, whenever it's like, let's sexualize our kids. Let's put cartoon fellatio in the K through 12 library and pretend it's not pornography. As a parent, my head goes to that place, and that's not a good place. That where I go next from that place is real dark.
I agree. It's a very dark place to be, and it is really interesting when you look at the theories and you see, sexualizing children down to 5 years old. Like, that's what school boards and stuff like that, when it comes to, and this was brought in under like the guise of SEL and everything like that, and you go into sexual education, like comprehensive sex education is what it's called, and it goes down to like 5 years old. You're like, why do you need to be talking to children about, like 5-year-olds, about what anything to do with sex? Like, why is this? It's one of the reasons why I've pushed bills in states to make sex ed even just an opt-in system for parents, so they have to actually opt their children into it. So if they don't want to talk about it, then they have the schools do it, but it's parental's responsibility. But you're absolutely right. Like, when you start to see the people that sometimes put themselves into those positions in schools, and what they start pushing onto children, and sometimes how they try to separate children from their family or I don't know any adult, what any reason for an adult to keep secrets with children. That's red flag in and of itself. Like, is like that. There's steps of the typical steps of grooming. That's like 3 of 5, like right there, right? The next step is actually having like an emotional connection with this child, and then blackmailing this child,
desensitizing to
Yep.
touch, all this kind of.
Yeah, so it goes up to like step 5. And so you're absolutely right when you say, but in this even goes back to queer theory, and this is why the Q is separate from the T, I think. But even though the Q and the T, the Q overtook the T and made it transgender instead of transsexual, so that now transgender is this umbrella term for anything that you want it to be. And so it kind of mixes in with the Q, which is all the queer theorists and stuff like that believe in this ideology. But when you start to really go back and look, even the moniker, and this is the desensitization, the moniker "love is love" sounds perfect enough for something that would be like, oh, just live and let live. Love is love, no matter who it's with. But then you start to realize love is love, and what they mean by that is love even with children. And so that is where you're going with this. And so that is the queer aspect, even early on in the gay rights movement, that has perpetuated. And then if you remember early on in the gay rights movement, the normal gays fought off NAMBLA, the National Boy Love Association, which was part of that as well.
I remember that disgusting acronym mostly because Bill O'Reilly, that was a common and justifiable what is the term for when you just want to beat something to death all the time?
Oh,
but it was
yeah.
Anyway, NAMBLA was a routine thing. I feel like I remember Bill O'Reilly beating up on, because it's obviously it's just heinous. It's just obviously like you are broken and deviant. And I feel bad for you that that's the case, but you need to be put in a box. Like, what?
Yeah. So so absolutely throughout the gay rights movement history, there's always been this attempt to try to infiltrate into the pedophilia aspect into it and normalize pedophilia along with the gay rights movement. And historically, the community has fought that away because they were just fighting for gay marriage. They're just fighting for equal rights. But now we go back to 2015 when the normal gays just went away and now it's just the activist. And now you're seeing, once that happens, now you have the MAPS, the minor attracted persons is now what they're trying to call themselves so that it doesn't sound as heinous as what it is, which is pedophilia.
And if you are starting from this academic place that sort of revels in transgressing against all tradition because that means you're like more of an intellectual if you've got a kind of heterodox opinion. So that's one of the feedback loops in academia that can be neat if you're Einstein and you're coming up with alternatives to, physics. But like that there's a transgressiveness of the elite sort of intellectual class that's playing in there. And then you've just got like, okay, we've created a tent for predators.
Yeah, but also look at it too. And this is also when it comes to wanting to medicalize children is children know who they are. Is the next step to saying children can consent. So that if a child, that is the question. If a child can consent to puberty blockers or cross-sex hormones,
yes,
why can't they consent to sex?
It strikes me fundamentally as I mean, it's worse. It's worse to consent to having yourself medically mutilated from a impact on your future, impact on your body, impact on yourself. So as a matter of logic and then it certainly is the case. If you are going to make the argument that a 10-year-old can make that choice, you are at the exact same time making the argument that they can consent to a lot of other stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't see how you disentangle those two.
No.
Because you're not literally just talking about, you're talking about sex. You're talking about sexual life in this thought process.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't it be the case that if you're arguing for these kind of modifications that you're not also arguing for consent to sexual action? I don't see the argument. Like, what is the argument against that? Because surely there's going to be a lot of pro-trans rights people who it's in their interest to be able to make an argument that what we just said is false,
Yeah.
what would they say to what we're saying?
So this is, I would believe that they would say, well, they would claim that puberty blockers are fully reversible. What do you mean? It's not permanent harm, which we know is false, but that's the claim that they make. That's how they normalize that, say that children can make this decision because it's not actually harming them. It's just puberty blockers, and they can, if they come off of them, then they'll go through puberty like normal, and it's all good, which it's not. But at the same time, so the way that the Dutch model worked to transition was puberty blockers until the age of 16. Well, part of the issue with
what is this? What is the Dutch model?
So the Dutch model was one of the earliest studies that they had, and it basically was like, and it was mostly on males, and we know that most of the transitioners right now are females, but it was mostly to say, if we stop puberty, then when they become and they hit 16, we believe that they can consent to these life-altering hormones and stuff like that. Then, like that, we just give them time to really make sure that this is who they are before we put them on cross-sex hormones. And the Dutch model was founded on one study that it said that this was beneficial and this worked, and it helped reduce suicidality. It did all this stuff. It was beneficial. That study has never been able to be recreated. In fact, the person that created the Dutch model now says that the way that the world was using it is completely not the way that they had intended it when they wrote how this course of treatment would go. But it's basically, yeah, so you pause puberty until the age of 16, then you start on cross-sex hormones, which is what has kind of been the foundation for all the medical industries up until even to this point. Even WPATH is still pretty much, so the World Professional Association of Transgender Health is still pretty much pushing this idea of puberty blockers until that point. And so going back to what would they say is like, you're just putting a pause on it until the age of 16. And I do believe part of the issue is, in much of the United States, in most states, the age of consent is 16 years old. So how do you fight against to say a 16-year-old can't consent to cross-sex hormones when we do allow them to consent to sexual relationship with each other?
I'm gonna ask a personal question so it can help us dig into some of this. We don't have to get graphic, but what have you experienced in terms of your transition? How far have you gone, if you don't mind?
I've had surgery. I've had everything. So I've gone the full length, and I was 30 something years old when I fully transitioned.
Okay, yeah. So you that means you've had your genitals removed, modified,
repurposed.
Yeah. Okay. I can't help how cringy and totally uncomfortable I am. Viewers, you can mock me in the comments. And it's out of a sheer fact that I can't imagine doing it. I can't. I know. It's like, I'm sorry. It's like, oh boy, I can feel myself getting red. All right.
Me too.
Okay. But why I ask that is this. Let's walk through what happens so that the viewer understands, because they get hit. For the viewer that is found this video, they are a parent. Their parent and their kids their child is wanting things to happen, and they've gone to one of these doctors that says, yeah, we can pause puberty. That's a thing. What happens? What is the drug that gets used, and what does it do?
Okay, so yes, Lupron is the drug that's used, and Lupron is used for multiple things. Viable uses that they use it for is actually for precocious puberty, for children who start going through puberty around 5 or 6. They're going through puberty at an age that's too young, and their body's not developed enough to actually go through that. So they do give them a couple years. That's a viable use, and it's used very rarely in those cases. And then it's also used for IVF treatments. So in IVF, you have to start cycles and you have to time everything and do all that. So they use it to stop a woman's cycle so that they can control the cycle completely, so that they can ovulate and do everything that they need to do. They also it's also been known to, I think they removed it. It's considered inhumane to use it to chemically castrate sex offenders. So,
but it was used for that.
They used to use it to do that, and I believe it was considered inhumane. Now, it is a chemically castrating, which means that once you stop taking it, once you come off of it, those effects are no longer there. So you're no longer like sterile after that point. I think that's where some people may be confused, because it does say castration, but it's not necessarily full castration. It's just when you're using it.
Okay.
So you're putting these children on chemically castrating drugs.
But in theory, when if the drug is stopped, reproductive function should return.
Yes.
Do you know how damaging is it? Like the longer you're on it, the more damaging it is to your ability to reproduce?
I know they don't want, like, when females take it for IVF treatments, they don't want to do it for any longer than a month, because it could cause issues in the fertility cycle by stopping the complete cycle for that. I have no idea how long and what happens to a male who is put on it as an adult either. But we know that it also causes severe developmental issues, because when you're thinking about that, none of the studies have studied what happens when you put children on it in key developmental years. So we talk about precocious puberty, it works. And those are all the studies that they use for saying that it's completely reversible. Whereas but they've never studied it on 12, 13, 14 years old, where you noted, it's like when you start going through puberty, it's like, boom, it's like it's a huge hit when it happens. And so those are what you would consider key developmental years. Those are when your brain is doubling in size, your everything is developing very quickly and going through the puberty process. They don't study that. And we do know that it could slow your brain function. It could slow brain development down. Some of the newer studies that have started to come out have started to show the studies. And it's interesting to me, because even WPATH in their Standards of Care 8 pointed out all these different side effects of what this could be. They noted that the FDA, these are being prescribed off-label from the FDA use, because the FDA is not going to approve them for this type of purpose, but they're allowed to use them off-label. And so they're in their Standards of Care 8, they say these have been known to cause this issue, it's been known to cause this brain developmental issues. But that study was only like 80 people, and so we don't really know. That's basically what their Standards of Care 8. We don't really know, so we're just going to go forward and use them. And basically, it goes back to like the whole. It's like a mass experiment that they're having on the kids right now. That they're not consenting to an experiment because they think it's the right treatment. So they're not even giving them the right information.
We're not completely sure 100% that it's totally disastrous every time. So let's do it.
Yeah, we know that it does have these effects sometimes, but let's just do it. Let's try it, you know? But we saw that in a little thing in 2020 that we saw as well. So, you know.
It's like the inverse precautionary principle. It's like maximum risk, maximum potential harm, go.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it's a mass experiment on a mass population of people. They're going, okay, we're just gonna try it on a mass population and then see how much actually goes wrong. It's a massive experiment.
Okay,
rather than what we should be doing.
So, I have my prepubescent son.
Yep.
I have been convinced for whatever reason that my son is going to go on this to pause puberty. What about that? Let's imagine he is ultimately just going to be gay. Let's say.
Yeah.
Just going to be gay. What happens to his penis? What happens to his testicles?
Yeah, that's
what's going on here? Because if you're gonna grow up and be a gay man, my guess is you probably don't want bad stuff happening to your penis.
I agree.
So what happens?
So that's where I was. So essentially, it stops growing. Everything stops developing as it normally would.
Does it spring back? Or
No.
if you come off the drug, like, oh no.
No, and that's part of that's the big thing. No, you end up creating this micro penis that you will have for the rest of your life, and you can't really do anything.
Is that the term, micro penis?
It would be a micro penis, right? It would be like. No, so yes, but and then just say, but then go forward too and say it's even harmful for the people that would end up going on and taking cross-sex hormones as well, and then having like surgeries. So because you don't have any, because you've stopped that development, you don't have enough tissue. Say you are fully trans and you want to, you do want to have the surgery. This is actually the Jazz Jennings problem. If you've seen Jazz Jennings,
this is the like young boy
on TLC with the trans house and mom. Yeah.
So to be, I'm avoiding using religious things like satanic in this conversation largely, but it is only with great difficulty that I am.
Yeah.
But when it comes to that, it's like everyone involved in that is Satan.
It's just evil.
Everything,
really
everyone
is.
involved with it, the producers, the network, everybody that's touched it to me. But let's keep going.
It was
Brief moment of Catholic rage.
No, because you
and
did.
Let's go back.
No, because you had talked about Caitlyn Jenner. Jazz Jennings was the first like trans child that was on TV that really pushed this forward. Had surgery on national television at actually 17, which was illegal at the time. And now the Jazz's surgeon was the president of WPATH, Marcy Bowers, for a little while. So
right.
So the interesting thing that we do know,
these are the moments where I'm like, I'm kind of glad Obama didn't shut down Guantanamo Bay. It's good to have these assets for something.
Maybe.
I'm sorry.
I mean,
we'll get to where I get truly. We'll get more retrograde later. But okay, so keep going.
Okay, so you go to have you have these surgeries. What they have to do, because you don't have enough tissue to invert everything, is they have to graft tissue from the colon. And you can just imagine you're grafting it from the colon. One, anytime you have to graft skin from elsewhere, it's going to cause risk. And there have been people that have died from having this surgery, from being grafted from that area of the body. Also, it smells. So that's one thing where you don't have that if you actually did go through puberty and you have everything else. It doesn't.
Because there's actual like fecal matter and things.
Yes, that's the area of the body that creates that stuff. And so it's like, and then you have, again, Marcy Bowers, who was caught on camera saying as a surgeon that if 100% of the time, if a child is actually blocked before Tanner stage 2, which is where you go through puberty, if they're actually blocked before that time, that child has any child that she has ever worked on has never experienced an orgasm in their life. So you are now expecting a child can consent to something that they should not absolutely understand what that means. And a lot of times, like, they will grow up and then end up being asexual, not have, because they won't have any sexual satisfaction. And which even she noted in this video is that is very important in relationships. When she worked in vaginal reconstruction surgeries, that's what her background was in, and so that's very important in relationships. And yet they're allowing this to happen, and then she becomes the president of WPATH and doesn't change the guidance. That's where I don't understand, and that's where I'm like, this is happening. You're the president. How do you not change the guidance to maybe we shouldn't be doing this? Maybe we should push it. Let them grow into adulthood at this point.
So just so I understand this, is any sexual satisfaction possible in the aftermath of these surgeries?
Absolutely.
That's interesting.
So, I mean, okay. It might get a little graphic here. No, so think about it this way. A gay man has sex, and it's his prostate that creates that sexual satisfaction. They put the canal between the prostate and the anal glands. So you're actually hitting the same spot.
Getting real graphic.
I told you. And then they also repurpose other stuff to create what would be a neo-clitoris, which is functional as well.
So like the head of the penis and
That's
stuff.
That's exactly what they do.
Yes.
And they never detach the nerves to create that.
I'll give him this. It's creative. Okay. So to summarize that, oh my God, please, Mom and Dad, don't watch this episode.
I didn't know I was going to be explaining something.
Okay. So if you are in the very rare case like you, who as a fully grown adult makes a decision to do this to your own body as an adult, well into adulthood, after having served in Iraq or Afghanistan, been through the military, got the gold star,
Yeah,
like
Bronze Star.
Bronze Star. Okay, so like you've got agency. I might think what you've done to yourself is completely nuts, which I love you, but I think it's completely crazy. But that's you. We live in a free society, and you're an adult, and you get to make those decisions for yourself.
Yep.
And I will defend that, and I will stand and say I don't think it should be done. But you're an adult and you get to make those decisions for yourself. Mm-hmm. And the road down blocking that, I just am uncomfortable with from like the legal world that would unleash would be tough. Mm-hmm. Although I can understand, I can imagine a religious order in which that wouldn't be the case. It's interesting that in Iran, they actually forced this on gay men.
Yes,
is my understanding.
Yeah, because homosexuality is a sin. So if you date men, they kind of actually almost subscribe to the queer theory aspect is if you transition to be a woman, then you are a woman. So then it's not a gay relationship.
So this gives you a sense of like the other paths that could be taken and are taken in other countries. Okay. Well, this makes the whole thing of putting kids on these drugs completely insane because you're not even giving the adult version of this person who might really, truly never feel satisfied or comfortable unless they do this, like you're actually cutting off the process of that being fully realized.
Exactly.
That's insane.
Yep. It hurts the children that they're claiming to protect. And then when you start to see that the desist rates go up to like 90% by the age of 20.
Wait, what do you mean by that?
Which means that most of them grow out of it by the age of 20. So about 90% grow out of it by the age of 20.
Okay, so let's linger on that for a minute. So 90% of who do what? Like really talk to me like I'm a child here. What's the group we're starting with?
So we're starting with that group of people, whether it's starting with the 4-year-old that says they're a girl, or you're starting with the 13-year-old who has rapid onset gender dysphoria, which I don't like that term. Just it's not real gender dysphoria. I think that's more the social contagion stuff, or something else going on. Just being uncomfortable with puberty, for example. So I think that starting even there, they would say by the age of 20. So all of those people, about 90% of them will grow out of it. And only about 10% of them would actually still have dysphoric feelings after the age of 20.
Okay, so you're starting with so as a parent, and this is really important if you're watching this, if you have a could be Sarah, maybe, and you're not sure, it's only a 10% likelihood that your child is actually going to end up doing what you've done.
Exactly.
9 out of 10. Are they going to be gay? Are they going to actually not be gay? Like, what's the most likely outcome there?
Most likely outcome is that they're homosexual and they're just more effeminate. But if they are a more effeminate person, then they would most likely wind up to be homosexual. And then there is, I mean, I don't know how much the likelihood is that they would be just a straight man, or they just turn out to be straight, because generally the ones that are straight are more so the fetishist that come out when they're like 50, and then they make everybody else uncomfortable. So that's a completely different thing. They're the ones that get their kicks from dressing up, but they don't actually go through the transition process in the first place. So I would say that most likely outcome is that person's gay.
How do you understand the percentage of the population that is you, that is like come into adulthood, isn't just cross-dressing for kicks, but like goes through the surgery, the whole thing, and feels better about yourself as a result? Do you have any sense of that? Is it even a knowable thing?
It's. I think that we would have to go back before it became popular, and it would be more so somewhere around 0.01% of the population. It was before 2016. There was something like 140 million trans people out of 130 million people in this country.
Wait, do that number?
I think it was 140 million people, or it was I think it was 140 million trans people
on Earth.
No, It was a very small portion. It might have been 14 million trans people compared to 330 million. I'd have to look up the stats on that one.
It wouldn't be 140 million. That'd be like half
that's what I was like, that's quite
that'd be like California.
Yeah, that would
like
be,
if I remember California, that would be that.
Well, maybe.
Okay, all right. So, but sub 1%, sub 1%, maybe sub 0.5%.
Yeah.
Processing. Okay. All of that suggests extreme caution on everyone's front.
Yeah.
So now you come to this, and what you have is what I have heard, what Dr. Haim with the Children's Hospital, but this has been out there more broadly, is that psychologists, psychiatrists, and medical doctors in this booming multi-billion-dollar industry now, as I understand it, Planned Parenthood has gotten all in on, which the way I would put that is, well, if you can't kill the baby, let's just sterilize the parents. That's how I would phrase that, which is not charitable, but
it shouldn't be
I
charitable.
despise Planned Parenthood, so I don't care.
Yeah.
This is the story. You can either have a living daughter or a dead son.
It's a fallacy. That is the emotional abuse tactic that is used to manipulate parents into moving forward, into medicalizing their child like this. Absolutely. Into lifelong medicalization. Because if you think about it, you cut this stuff off. You're on pills and you're on injections or whatever for the rest of your life.
You're a big pharma annuity project.
Yeah.
It's a good investment. You should be selling stock.
Well, there was a finance person from Vanderbilt who was caught on camera saying that this is a big money maker, that they make like their entire year's budget off of just one type of surgery. And you're actually bragging that this is a big money maker. That doesn't make sense to me. But that is, so you lay it out there and it's good because I think that there is a lot of medical capture. It's not just in this, it's in everything.
Yeah.
And I kind of lay it out there. I think that there are those doctors who might even be just brainwashed and think that they're actually doing the right thing. There's the activists out there who are going to push this and this is what they want to do. There's also the evil people that will just do it for money and don't care what the harm that they cause.
Or like my dad knew an abortionist doctor in Philadelphia who believed his job was to rid the world of all these poor black people in Philadelphia, and would say it out loud and was like, "Are you Dr. Mengele? Like what? Oh my God!"
No, absolutely. There are those types of doctors. And this is where I tend to get on my soapbox too and say, I also think that, especially in our mental health community, and I don't know whether it's laziness or it's just incompetence when it comes to not treating the root causes of these issues. So you start to look at, and this isn't just in this world, we're throwing SSRIs at everything. They're just going to throw pills at everyone. And so you may be trans. So if they can make you think, oh, you're trans, that's the cure. I'm just going to give you pills. Or, oh, you're having depression, here's pills. We're not going to work on any of those root cause issues and help you work on ways to work through those issues in the moment. We're not going to do like health coaching stuff. We're just going to throw pills at it. Never mind the fact that among the detransition community and among the community as a whole, we see high rates of autism.
I was just going to say, so this is a good segue into the mental health question that surrounds this. So keep going.
So there is a high rate of autism. And from the people that I know with autistic traits, some have Asperger's, some have other areas of the spectrum. And it's like, it was an idea that they completely grabbed onto. I have another friend who she said if she, just with her upbringing, she would have probably transitioned because it would have been an idea that would have been implanted that she wouldn't have been able to let go of. And so there's some of that aspect that we're not actually treating. And it's young females because for historically all the diagnosis criteria for autism was mostly based on males. And so there's not really a good criteria based on females. And so we're seeing a lot of young female people, on the spectrum who are now detransitioning because they're like, wait, this wasn't right. I wasn't really trans. I was just, I grabbed onto this. I also know some people that have borderline personality disorder. They have high anxiety. They have one of the people that I know, and she's been very open with her story. She actually was testifying here a couple weeks ago. Her name is Prisha Mosley, and she one time said that she had cutting scars all over her body, and then she went into the doctor's office and they cut her breast off, and it was almost like they were just aiding in her self-mutilation and not asking questions as to, well, maybe we should get that figured out first. And so going back into, you can either have a trans child or a dead child, I would say that even before, if you're actually feeling those feelings, you need to work through that, because this is not an easy process. And there's no cure for it. It's not an easy process to go through to get to this point to where you're actually comfortable in your own skin. You do go through some patches where you're like, where you do feel a little crazy. Changing hormones is very interesting because hormones do so much for your mental state, mental aspect. And so if you're actually feeling that, maybe you should get that figured out. And so that way you're not feeling that way before you move into this. And therapists are not pushing that type of
Well, and this is where we
mentality.
get to, we talked about all these different cultural touchstone players and moments, and one of them was Bill C-16 and Jordan Peterson. And then he explodes onto the scene in the culture through his as a clinical psychologist and as this decorated, heretofore admired researcher guy, and he starts to note, among other things, that young girls are going to be at risk in a very particular way because of natural aspects of being a woman that seem to align with being sociable, let's just say. I'm going to summarize this, and maybe I'll get some of it wrong. I'm going to do my best here. But it goes something like this. Bulimia and anorexia are contagious. They are particularly contagious among, maybe even only contagious, but especially so among girls and women. And the reason is, the evolutionary psychology reason is something like, well, women evolved to be far more social, far more people-oriented, and so they're much more inclined to be persuaded by group fads and things like that than guys. Men tend to, you go far enough back, the women are all together, caring for the children, knitting, talking, gabbing, and the guys are out there getting killed by tigers. I know this is like low resolution pop ev psych bullshit, but that's basically the story as I understand it. But it does express itself in these ways that do seem to replicate like socially contagious behavioral phenomena. And what Jordan has said, and I think others, is gender dysphoria has historically, until this craze, been much more masculine. It's been much more male. Boys have tended to be the ones who present this gender dysphoric, persistent gender dysphoria, not young women. But you said it early in our conversation that as we sit here today in 2025, the majority of transitioners are female now. Female to masculine. You take all those things together and you've got like massive, basically political and social brainwashing into self-sterilization going on. That's what it sounds like we're experiencing.
Yeah, very much so. Because it absolutely, Jordan Peterson is right when historically you look through it, it's been a very small portion of males that have female tendencies and transition. To the point, I mean, you can look at Thailand. They actually have like the separate sex. It's not a separate sex, but they have a separate class over there for this, and it's been historically
lady boys.
Yeah, and they don't consider themselves women though. That's the other thing that's really weird, interesting too. They consider themselves lady boys. They're not women. It's not the same cultural aspect of it. But when you start to look at the factors that we're seeing now,
and just for the sake of that, I don't know. There's got to be a relationship there between whatever kind of the like let's say, role that Thailand has played in international like sex trade and like, right? Like,
It could.
like it's weird that like, why would it happen in Thailand that way culturally is weird. I don't, maybe you have nothing to say to that, but it is strange actually.
It is. And maybe it could, I think, I don't know really necessarily, religious aspects or anything like that, where I don't know.
Yeah, maybe there's some other element there. It is just
interesting. And that could be a good point, though. And it could be more like Iran, to where we create this separate section of people that's not necessarily homosexual people, but okay, you want to live like that, whatever. It's mostly the men who would stay back with the women in the hunting groups, the young boys, and they grow up and want to help their moms with all that stuff. And it's just interesting in that facet.
Well, and just I just finished reading this book, Dominion by Tom Holland. It's about the role of Christianity in Western civilization. And I'm bringing this up now for a particular reason, which is that one of the things that it drew attention to for me that I never really appreciated in terms of Christianity's role in the West is that it was incredibly common in Roman and Greek society, Gentile society, because you could see this as Judeo-Christian ethic, that a Roman man would not be judged for being married and having sex with whoever they want, including the boys.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was common for a Roman man who's considered like a centurion to be married to a woman, have a bunch of kids, have some servants, male and female, and have sex with the servants, male and female, and they weren't like called gay or anything. That was common in both Greek and Roman, and it's still true in the Taliban.
I was gonna say
Afghanistan. So that's a common that's some old school stuff going on.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as the human animal is concerned, there's all kinds of behaviors that have been with us for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And then one of the just to finish the story and why it would be in this book about Christianity is the particular way that the Christian faith developed to see the man and woman in marriage as being sacred and in a equal bond was a kind of radical revolution in marriage, because it used to be that really only the woman needs to be have fidelity.
Mm-hmm.
And Christianity is so Tom Holland says, brought male fidelity to the table. All of that is just to say all this crazy stuff out there has been going on for a long, long time. And depending on your moral frame, it's just been crazy for a long, long time. And
so
I feel like I'm doing this after this conversation.
So we go back to what we were talking about with it typically being a male trait. Even to this day, what you see if you look at like the Tavistock clinics, the way that their gender program went up, the males
was this the one in the UK?
It closed down. Yeah, and actually, you can look at all the different gender clinics in Europe, especially because they keep better stats. I guess I don't know.
And I also think there was someone in Canada, not Peterson, but an actual gender dysphoria expert who was like the leading guy on this, who's been canceled because it noted this exact point. But
I would have to look. I don't know.
I might be misremembering. Yeah, but keep going. So we're in.
The male transit. So in about 2016, 2017 timeframe, you see the male. It does go up slightly, but then you watch the female, and it's mostly below the male line, and then it skyrockets, and it just kind of goes up. And so there's a lot of that. And so when we go back into talk about social contagion aspects and the feminine psyche and everything like that, most of these young girls who are experienced, and Abigail Schreier wrote about this in End of Gender, or Irreversible Damage. I was thinking Deborah So was End of Gender. But so she wrote about this and the rapid onset gender dysphoria. And this is why I believe that it's more the social contagion. I don't believe it's gender dysphoria in of itself. So I don't agree with the wording that's used, but I guess it's a good way to describe it. So the young females, they start going through puberty, which puberty is an uncomfortable time for anyone.
Yeah.
It's also a time when young females especially would have be more sexualized by older men.
My wife, who's very curvy, has told me this, and it's when she first told it to me, I was like, I've never thought about that in my entire life. She's like, it's horrible. She's like, your breasts start to form, and like you can feel like even like your male family members like notice, like you catch their gaze, like because we're men and because we look at boobs. So it's like, she's like, it's horrible. You hate your breasts. You hate what's happening to your body and the looks and the attention it's attracting. And it just feels terrible.
Yeah. And so that's the first step. So at that point, a lot of these young girls just want to opt out. They want to pause the puberty. I'm a man. You know what? That's what it is. I don't want that attention. I don't want that. I'm starting to feel it. Just stop it. And so I'm a man. Mom, I'm a man. What we also see too a lot of times, and this is the other aspect, is it's even more prevalent when that child has experienced sexual trauma. And that is what's happening. They're experiencing sexual trauma, and then they go to a doctor a doctor is not actually treating the sexual trauma that they may not know about.
So they've been sexually assaulted either by a family member or just somebody at school or whatever. Yeah. And now they really want to opt
traumatized. Out. They want to opt out of womanhood completely because obviously if this is what being a woman is, they don't want it. And so that's I think those are two of the major aspects that we're seeing, and that's why we're seeing it in young girls, because we've given them this option that they can opt out of womanhood. And at that age that they're doing it, they're opting out. Because, I mean, when you look at a lot of these detransitioners, you look at somebody like Chloe Cole, who was 13 years old, found it on Instagram and said, I don't think I could live up to what these women on Instagram are. And then add autism on top of that, add other stuff on top of that, and then goes to the doctor and then starts dressing more masculine. Like, I don't think I can live up to that. So I don't think that's what I am. I think I'm a boy. And those are the types of things that completely push forward. And it's like, and it's all around that same age. Hers was 13 years old. Most of them are 13, 14. And then she has a double mastectomy at 15 years old. And then detransitions at 16 years old. Realizes that she wants to breastfeed children one day. And it's like that. So again, once you get kind of past that puberty area, then you're like, wait a second, this wasn't right. And that's why you need to get them through that area. And I don't know what the answer is, especially when it comes to mental health counseling, because as you can tell, I don't have much faith in the mental health community as a whole right now.
Well, this is so if you are a parent and you have a child who's coming to you with these requests and with this sense, and you can see there's something going on, but you've heard this conversation up to this point. This is where things get really hard, because it appears that psychology as a discipline is shot through with radical satanic communists. And I say that bombastically for provocative reasons. My dad's a doctor. He used to call this needing a hall pass, because in his practice, down the hall was a psychiatrist. And I grew up hearing about how crazy all the psychology people were, and that crazy people go into psychology. Now, that's not fair. I actually have a lot of psychologists on the show. I think there's a lot, and great ones. Yeah. Erica Komisar, who's actually technically a therapist. Dr. Camilo Ortiz. I've had a bunch. Mm-hmm. But there is a selection bias there that you're interested in mental health. Maybe you've got some mental health problems yourself. But it does appear to be an area that has been absolutely soaked with this radical queer theory Marxism for a while. Is that your perception of it? Or is that actually just kind of me being like trapped in right-wing echo chamber nonsense?
No, I think you're absolutely right. Like I know a lot of good therapists too that are very much in the same boat as you, is what you're saying. They're presenting it the same way. Pamela Garfield wrote a book exactly on this stuff and how to talk to your kids about this stuff.
What's it called?
I'll give it to you. I'll have to give it to you later.
Send it to us so we can put a link in the notes.
And I'll give you her social media handles and stuff too. And she wrote a book about this, and it's how to actually work with your kids on this type of stuff. And it's written in layman's terms for any parent who's not actively involved. doesn't know all the queer theory stuff the entire thing that we've talked about in this episode. But there is a group now, and it's her, Jamie Reed, who is the whistleblower out of St. Louis, the St. Louis Children's Hospital, who was married to a trans man, self-identified queer woman before she blew the whistle on everything that was going on in that children's hospital. Tamara Pietsky, who is out of Seattle, Washington. She's actually a psychologist or a therapist who has blown the whistle. And her story it kind of explains exactly what you're saying. She was told by her superiors, and she ended up getting fired because she wouldn't do it. And they were like, no, you just prescribe them the medication. Just pencil whip the letter so that they can get put on medication. Like basically telling her to not trust her gut, that this wasn't right, and move forward with it. And it was this fact that she's surrounded by this. So there are these people have created an organization of,
because it's all the associations, and the American Pediatric Association, and of course WPATH, which sets the standards of care, as I understand it. That they all then, so it's this like Peter Boghossian's been on the show a bunch. He's now like, I'd consider him really like a friend, and he calls it idea smuggling. Oh, we will have this radical idea that's batshit crazy, and but then we'll put it into this washing machine of friends, peer reviewing friends. And now it comes out the other end as it's the settled science. Ta-da!
Well, and it's interesting because, James Lindsay did this too. He wrote an art, it was actually about critical race theory, but he wrote it through the eyes of critical race theories and made it to seem like the most crazy thing. And it got picked up by the major publications because it was exactly what they were looking for.
Yeah, they were doing that together.
And so it is like, so they created this association of like truthful therapists that they're starting to more build together and have like conferences and stuff like that to expose the harms that are in their own industry. That's exactly what you were talking about before, and how they all kind of conglomerate together. And also because it's all being taught in academia where they're all getting their license, so it's all like it's just capture. It's like complete. I would say like Angela Davis, who was the early on Angela Davis, intersectionality captured the institutions, and it's been doing it for a while. Started with critical race theory, moved into queer theory, and that's where you're seeing it happen into the therapist and the doctor's offices.
So how do you think of yourself? Do you think of yourself as having a mental illness?
Yeah. So again, going back, gender dysphoria, I believe is a mental illness because like it's not normal. So, and it's not what biologically would say happened. So I do believe that there's a mental illness there. If there's something that's so innate that makes you want to, that gives you the desire to be the opposite sex, that gives you the uncomfortability with your secondary sex characteristics, that gives you that innate desire to be the opposite sex. And then the way that has worked for me so far is with extreme body modification has worked for me. So
what does that mean? Tell me, what does it mean that it's worked? Are you happy?
I am the happiest I have ever been in my life. And part of it is that it's in the open. I think part of it is that I carried a secret my entire life.
And through the military too.
Exactly. I carried this secret through my entire life that I hoped and prayed to God that nobody would ever find out. But the moment that I came out and opened up to people, opened up to my family, and actually talked about it and was accepted and maybe not understood, but I'm able to live in a way that I feel authentic. I'm happy with that. And I'm happy with where I am today. And there's no shame, because that's what it was. I mean, hiding it was a feeling of shame. Yeah. And so knowing who I am and being comfortable in my own skin, I don't feel that shame. I'm not ashamed of who I am. And it is kind of funny because, the activists that so despise me in this community, they would call this internalized transphobia or self-hatred. They would call me a self-hating trans person. And what I would say is, it's kind of ironic that I don't hate myself. Me calling myself a trans woman, a subsection of men, and saying that is me, is not, and I'm not ashamed to say that, admit that biological reality is real, where their activism comes from their shame. They're so ashamed of their biology that they have to make everybody else accept their reality instead of what is reality. And so I think that was a huge weight when I was just, once you acknowledge this, then it kind of goes away. And once you start to realize that you're fighting on the side of truth, and it may not be the way that everybody sees as beneficial or will ever accept me as, but nobody's ever going to accept everybody. So I would just say I'm happy and comfortable with where I'm at. And I feel happy doing what I'm doing now, because it's a far cry from, going into the military, because this is one of those things that there is actually a large population of people who go into the military and then come out and then transition. So through history, they've kind of shown that more trans people have served in the military than are in the general population, a higher percentage. And I actually would say,
interesting.
I would say for me, I've never been suicidal in my life. But for me, when I was in Afghanistan, there was a part of me that said, if I die here, nobody would ever know about this thing I'm so shameful about. And at that point, so that's what I do. I think when you accept that, when you accept who you are, and when I finally came out, it was freeing. I never felt that way again.
I mean, as a parent, there's nothing that my son could do that would make me want him to cease to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's, like we've talked about already, that that feeling has been leveraged by people in the name of not serving the kids, but serving something else. Maybe Moloch.
It's vanity.
Is crazy. I really appreciate just how honest you are with this whole conversation, because I'm trying my best to navigate it in a way that's reasonable. Maybe not reasonable. Maybe reasonable is not the right way to put it. Honest.
Yeah.
Because it's really hard, and it's hard to find a way to understand it in a way that doesn't ask things of us that feel wrong. Mm-hmm. Most of where we turn in this as parents doesn't really. It's it just makes me glad that I haven't had to deal with it actually directly as a parent.
Yeah.
I did a video earlier this summer, and it was trying to make an argument for something that is that I'm grappling with philosophically, and I don't know that there is some sort of mathematical philosophy to get at it, but I want to throw it at you and see what you think.
Okay.
What I suggested is really kind of simple. That I think there should be shame up to a point. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is, yes, let's leave aside government. Let's leave aside what is legal or illegal. Mm-hmm. But that norms of society, by and large, are good. They can be bad. It's not guaranteed they're good.
Right.
Right? Yeah. Slavery was a norm for a long time. But there is a certain, let's call it just small c, conservative, traditional, sort of evolved, survived the process kind of thing that doesn't look like a flat world of utopia where there's only nurture and no nature. But no, there's there's a distribution. It's like a bell curve.
Yeah.
Of inside of here is going to work well for most people. Mm-hmm. And it's actually good for the society, for the culture, to put it on a pedestal. Man and woman married, then kids. Mm-hmm. I'd put it at the peak. Dad saves America. Get married to someone you love that shares your values, then have the kids stick together.
Yeah.
I think that's good. I think the efforts to say everything's good, whatever floats your boat, which I think some libertarian, obviously the left and sort of communists and radicals that want to deconstruct civilization, they don't like that. But libertarians sometimes are a little uncomfortable with this too. Mm-hmm. Do you, would anything peaceful? And I am in that camp. but with a little extra layer on top, which maybe makes me more conservative, which is there's norms. And some of those norms are good. And a lot of the conversation that we've had today, when it comes to the social contagion and the pressures and the institutions, not forget legal, just like now there's all these pressures and all these people and all these voices of authority in the society who are driving towards something that I think is bad. I want you to be happy.
Yeah.
And I want a 10-year-old who's a future you to be alive. But there's something in the middle between whatever floats your boat or actively promoting this and finding a way to flourish on your own terms, even hobbled. You can't have biological kids.
Yeah.
So you're compromised in ways that I think are tragic. I don't need to tell you. I'm telling you like I have a right to tell you that. What an asshole. But my point is, those are cost-benefit analysis we make.
Yep.
How do you think about the shoulds in our society? Because I think one of the things that's like really we're all struggling with, especially because social media and globalism is like, well, what should I do? What's the right thing? What does it mean to be an adult? What does it mean to have a happy life? I'm just getting hit with craziness.
Yeah.
How do you think about that? Did any of that make any sense?
No, absolutely. It does. So it is interesting because, I mean, the libertarian in me wants to say, well, who's to say what should be at all, right? Like that would be the libertarian philosophy. But I do think what you're saying, societal norms make sense for a reason, and they do. The outliers are okay, but societal norms would favor exactly what you're saying, and it's for the benefit of the rest of our creation, right? Man, woman, that's the only way that you can procreate and extend our life on this planet. So, yes, what promotes that should be seen as the cultural norm. So I absolutely agree with what you're saying in that too. And then then you're going to have the outliers in the standard deviation who they may not fit into the perfectly cookie cutter society, but as long as they're adults, they can live their lives as free as they want. But I agree with you that I would say it's not something to be promoted or pushed. I wouldn't the struggles that I've gone through in my life, I wouldn't necessarily push on anybody. I don't think it's the right way to go about it. Like I said, this is a hard process to live in. It's really, it really can be a mentally taxing if you're not mentally prepared for what it is. And I think that's, again, going back to, if you go into this and you think you're going to be cured because you go through this process, once you get to the end of the process and somebody calls you the wrong pronoun, for example, are you going to melt down because they called you the wrong pronoun? Then you weren't adequately prepared in the first place to even deal with the challenges that come along with this. Society is not going to bend to you, and I think that cultural norms are beneficial. And if you're outside those cultural norms, you have to understand what that means. If it means you're happy, then go for it. But if you are going to try to make those cultural norms change to bend to your will, then you're not going to be happy, and you're never going to be.
The way I think about it is along a graph. Again, like, so the bell curve here at the edges, it isn't zero. It isn't off with your head.
Yeah.
And through a lot of society, to this day, but also especially into the past, a lot of it looked more like a tower. And you were either here or you're thrown off.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good thing to have moderated it, to turn it into a slope. That slope can be slippery, but it is a slope. And I think that the question of, and this is where I think people who sort of hand wave away the culture wars, like this is all just culture wars, we really need to be talking about the monetary policy, which I agree we should talk about monetary policy. But this is really important stuff.
Yeah.
And an example of where things feel like they went off the deep end, just tangibly, and so Ellen Page becomes Elliot Page. And formerly fixtures of American cultural life, Time magazine, which has been a really bad actor politically in recent years. Just absolutely just a mouthpiece of radicalism. It is like, you want to talk about institutional capture. It's like Coca-Cola, Time, how many of these things are going to get destroyed? So I go into Walgreens with my son, and there's now Elliot Page at eye level of a child on the end cap. And this has got nothing to do with law. Although maybe it should. Probably not. I'm like, why did you put that there? This is where this is just very tangibly. Help me, like, how do you think about that? Because I could imagine that if it's 10-year-old you, that maybe that's good and helpful for you. But this is a trade-off. This is an example of the cultural trade-off where the rubber meets the road. Should we keep that behind doors so that the confused child that's at risk is protected, even if another child might have? How do you think about that? Might be. I don't know if affirms the word. I don't know. Like made to feel like they're not broken. I can empathize with the idea that if you're going through something, you want to see in the society examples of you thriving. I get that.
Yeah.
But how do we manage that?
Well, I think it needs to be proportional. Like if I'm 0.1% of the population and there's a trans person in every single Hollywood film, makes it seem like it's much more prevalent than it is. But if maybe like 1 in 1,000 movies has a trans person in it, I don't think that's an issue. You know, it's like almost proportionality makes a difference when it comes to it. And I don't know what the correct answer necessarily is when it comes to how we fix that and how we don't promote this. But I think sometimes I think it does come down to having the conversation with your kids and understanding where they're at, talking to them with where they're at in the conversation, like we would talk to anybody who's coming in to do a debate or something like that, and be like, I need to come at it from, like, speak to you where you're at. If you're like a centrist and you're kind of leaning on that side, but I can come at it from your aspect and explain something to you, then I think that is how you just have to manage that same aspect with your kids. And as somebody who's not a parent, I don't know how you do that. So, but I think in terms of like the cultural push, I think that there is I think that there, like you said, shame can be good, because I think in using somebody like Elliot Page is actually a great example, because I've not seen an interview where Elliot Page looks happy ever.
No.
And I have my conspiracy theories about Elliot Page and the Hollywood capture. I did a full video about Harley Pasternak, who was Kanye West's trainer, who was doing all the control with drugs and all this stuff. And like, telling Kanye West, I'll send you to Zombieland and you'll never see the kids again. Like, how much control that person has is also Elliot Page's trainer. So just like looking at some of these crazy connections that Hollywood has in general, you can see how that works.
I'm pretty sure like Ellen Page has said that as Ellen was sexually abused. Yeah. So there's just so much brokenness.
That's Hollywood sometimes.
Yeah. Where do you see? We are here. We have President Trump. We have a major swing in the other direction politically, and it does feel like culturally. Although the centers of gravity in New York and LA, they're bearing down. They're not. Mm-hmm. They're budging as they need to protect their bottom lines. Mm-hmm. Where do you see things headed on this? Is there a synthesis on the horizon that's healthier than radical woke, queer theory hell, and like something that could become retrograde and genuinely oppressive and genuinely violent? And because there's obviously places that can go dark here against people like you. I think that is horrible, and that I want to live in a tolerant society.
Yeah,
a tolerant, pluralistic pluralistic society that also has its head screwed on straight and kind of knows like, okay, we know what's generally good and we should be happy with that. And when somebody falls outside of lines, that's okay too. As long as you don't hurt people and you're an adult. Where do you think we're headed?
Well, I think in terms of the culture war, we have seen a lot of shifts in the culture war. And I wouldn't even look at the Trump election as necessarily the catalyst, because I actually look at somebody like Donald Trump. Yes, he's divisive to people on the left. I don't know how much his administration is actually going to set in permanent change. And so I don't really look to politicians to do that because, he's done some EOs, but you need 7 Democrat votes in the Senate to pass any of these things. So that's why I don't, and you have like a year to do it. So I don't see a lot changing in the political space, but I do see the culture changing. We've seen wins in culture. And I think that's really where you have to change the culture that thinks that these things are okay. I think that's because politicians are not going to change this. It's going to be this back and forth for a long time. But it is. I unfortunately, I do see everything heating up on both sides, and it's not just with this issue; it's with all issues. And you start to see content creators, political influencers getting swatted in every week where I even called my local police sheriff and said, "Hey, I'm a kind of a content creator. If you guys get a call, just like let them know so that we can work something out so that they don't come in and shoot my dogs." And then on the other side, and you're gonna like this one too. You have Trantifa.
All these names.
So this is actually Andy No coined this term because he's been following Antifa for a while. And recently there was like this murder cult of trans people. But it does seem, and I wrote an op-ed about this one at one point, talking about how in 2020 it was interesting because they were trying to push this Marxist ideas onto society. And so when the BLM riots happened, they were trying to use CRT as like the guys was behind the riots, right?
Well, and the actual BLM organization, I got this from Wilford Riley and haven't independently verified it, but he said that he followed the money on BLM and a lot of it was going to like international trans organizations.
Yeah. Well, and that's
which by the way, you go to any group of like black guys talking, it's like you couldn't possibly be less aligned.
Yeah.
It's like the most like whacked out. That's not a coalition. That's not a thing.
Well, and that's also what you saw a lot of the riots in 2020 it was Antifa trying to push their ideals. But the issue was that they needed the black community to be the one causing violence to really push their ideals. And so when that didn't work, and the black community pushed back against that.
Yeah.
And so when that didn't work, they said, wait a second. Here's an idea where we can actually just self-identify into a category. So now I'm non-binary, now I'm trans, and now now I can actually just go out and commit the violence, and it's in the name of trans rights. It's using the queer theorist as the vehicle to push this dangerous ideology. And the ending of my piece that I had wrote was that what's going to end up happening, and this happened like when Riley Gaines was attacked at the school and everything like that. And I remember there was a lot of this violence happening. Once they've completely ruined the acceptance rate of your normal trans person, they're going to just self-ID out of it into something else. And then we're the ones left holding the bag. And that's my fear, because we're seeing it ramp up, and more of the communities are these self-ID trans people, who are pushing like a lot of the violence. And Antifa went away. You don't hear the name Antifa anymore. It's Trantifa for a reason, because it's the same people, but they just look different, and they're saying that there's something different. And so they're actually the ones out there causing the violence.
Antifa with eyeliner, basically.
Yeah. And they're not the ones that are actually, needing the medical covers. They're not the ones that are getting the hormones. They're just, shaving their head or growing their hair out and doing all this stuff. And they're just doing it in the name of their activism to push their ideology, which is, again, under this guise of queer theory.
One of the things, as we start to wrap up, one of the things that I think is warranted, but might come across as extreme, and I'm curious to get your take on, is that, and some of the things we've talked about today have reinforced this for me. If you are in the medical field and you have participated in any of this on someone below, I'm just going to say the age of 20. It might need to be 25. There's some number. I would be inclined to say that it should actually be 25. That's like the completion of, to the best of our knowledge now, the completion of sort of executive functioning brain development.
Yeah, your brain fully develops, and your impulse control is the last thing to develop. I understand that. Now, what I would say to that is, I actually don't mind saying what ages. My only thing is, I think it should be the same across the board. So whatever we as a society determine adulthood to be, then that's what it should be for everything.
Yeah, I agree with that. In fact, I would be the first to say we should raise the voting age to the same thing.
Yeah.
Limit the franchise. Keep crazy people out of the voting booth, for crying out loud. Young people barely vote, so it doesn't really matter. But let's just say, for example, like you can't, I think it's 26 for rental cars.
It's 25 or 26.
Yeah, and this is actually a good market-based signal that predates this more recent psychology stuff. And it makes sense. It's like, oh, that's interesting to me, that the mass, large-scale actuarial data of driving behavior pointed to the fact that until you get to around 25, you're kind of crazy and irresponsible.
Mm-hmm. You can be on your parents' insurance until 25.
So let's just say, okay, 25. You're on your 26th birthday, do what you want. As part of that, I think we should prosecute these people. And here's what I mean. And maybe it's not up to 25 because that is stretching definitions. But below 18, if you are a doctor or a psychologist or a institution and you have performed these procedures, advocated for these procedures, I think you should be in prison. Mm-hmm. I think you've committed monstrous Aztec level satanic mutilation on the vulnerable, manipulated parents. And for all time, there needs to be a moment that wasn't just like, no more, but mm-hmm. I'm going to jail. Mm-hmm. And I kind of knew I was doing something wrong. Mm-hmm. What do you think? Am I crazy? Have I gone into Hitler land?
I don't think so. I think that you're actually, you're on to something, right? Like, we know, like, we should be prosecuting doctors. Like, when I've passed these laws, I'm like, I've seen Republican legislators try to protect their doctor friends in these laws too. So that's part of the issue, is some of these doctors are going to try to protect them to where they don't have the liability, that they can't, like, so in the Georgia law, they will lose their license and it's now a criminal act. They tried to take the part that it was a criminal act out of the bill. And so it was re-added by the Senate, and Governor Kemp, his team, got it passed, right? So those are the things. But yes, I agree. If you have done this, maybe we give, you do have these areas where you say, you know what? Let's do let's create plea deals for some of these doctors to
rat out the rest.
Well, say that, yeah, be like, hey, I was doing, like, give them a grace period. Like, I was doing something, but I thought I was doing the right thing. Those that actually do believe in they've been indoctrinated as well. So they're doing something that they think is absolutely right. If you give them and be like, hey, I thought I was doing the right thing, I was following the law at the time that the law was written, then, but these people, this is what's going on. This is the full, like, whistleblower story behind the scenes. Then, okay, grace period for those people. But yeah, I think that the people that do it after you say, no, you can't do this, those people are in violation of mutilating children.
The precedent for this is something like some combination of the Nuremberg trials and like these truth and reconciliation commissions. It does seem like if we're going to move past this and find a new equilibrium that isn't really harsh and retrograde, I'm inclined towards the idea that something like this is going to need to happen, and it's going to happen. Mm-hmm. It's going to come sooner or later.
Yeah. Well, and I agree that's one aspect. I think when you asked me before, when we were talking about like how the culture shifted and everything like that, I do think that there's some things that can happen outside of government that is going to change this. So kind of come into practicality that we can't just throw all these people in jail. And I would say lawsuits. I tell detransitioners their lawsuits are the number one thing that's going to
civil action,
because it's hitting these doctors in the pocketbook. If they are being sued for medical malpractice, it's going to say that it's going to de-incentivize the process in and of itself. It also what it also works as is even in like states like California and stuff like that who are never going to ban the procedures and allow these lawsuits and stuff to go forward. But even in those states, medical malpractice insurance agencies are not covering this care anymore. They're like, hey, if you do those procedures, we're not going to cover that because we are not going to pay out on these lawsuits. So that's what can change the culture as lawsuits completely and just take the incentives out. But what needs to happen to get those lawsuits to court is a change in, and I know Texas is working on this right now, but a change in the statute of limitations on medical malpractice. The issue is the average detransition takes place between 5 and 10 years.
Oh yeah, so you're falling outside of the statute.
The statute of limitations in most cases is only 3 years in most states. So even when you go, if you think this is right, and then you go back and be like, oh no. So I know Texas is, I think, changing it to 10 years. They're looking to change it to 10 years. And that's what I think every state should do. As well, I believe that so this should be like, I think they have, in some states, they have what would be the detransitioner Bill of Rights, to where if insurance companies are willing to pay for quote unquote gender affirming care, pay for this stuff, then they should also be forced to pay for detransition care. Because right now, a lot of detransitioners are suffering because they can't get their care even paid for once they've gone the other way. It's like, so because they're like, hey, you made a mistake. It's not our fault you made the mistake, but you were pushed into it, but you can't sue your doctor for that. So those are the two things that if we really want to change the behavior of doctors, it's hit them in the pocketbook, make it so it's not, you don't have to incentivize it. And those are two things that can do that.
I ask this question of every guest. The show's Dad Saves America, and it is called that for many reasons, but one is because I think as a man, this is a role that I think is heroic, and if we can get to play it, it really echoes out, starting with the family to the community to the country. How do you think about your role in the American story?
I would say, my role in the American story is to use the voice and the platform that I've been given to promote, to advocate against the harm that's being done to children, especially in this aspect. And hopefully we get to a point where I can do the other stuff that I really enjoy, advocating against like anti-war stuff, like that's another thing I'm passionate about. And
and you can do it honestly as a vet.
Exactly. So I think that my advocacy from my experiences where I fit in and showing the hazards of different areas in politics and stuff like that.
Sara, thanks for being on Dad Saves America. It's been a wild ride.
That was fun. Thank you.